Hello, you silly sea lions. This is your good friend Paul, and with me, my co host.
Alejandro.
And we're here to talk to you about little things that we've been playing, plus a random gaming related topic that I always prepare for. It's good to see everyone. As you can see, this is a completely different day and not actually the same day.
Yeah.
As you obviously because I'm wearing a hoodie now.
Yeah, we're
and I wasn't
totally we're
earlier.
totally not just jumping into the other thing because someone's going on an anniversary trip.
Yeah. Alejandro, did you see that crazy Xbox thing? Like that was crazy. You would never
Yeah.
expected the dancing elephants.
I can't believe they announced.
Read it out. All right. So without any further ado, we're going to jump into anything that we've been playing, which has not been a lot, at least for me, Alejandro. Have you played anything different?
No, from like last week only. No, actually, no, it's almost the same things I played last week. I didn't keep playing Forza Horizon because I was still.
That's on my list as well.
Yeah, I was still kind of playing through Metroid Prime 3 Corruption. And by the way, do I sound good?
Oh yeah, you sound great.
Okay, it was just sounding weird and some weird echo from my side. Yeah, I kind of wanted to, like I said, Metroid games are just ones that you just have to finish. So I've gotten further into Metroid Prime 3 than I had when I played it back in '08. Still enjoying it. With Call of Duty Vanguard, obviously I mentioned I had played only the first mission before that whole thing crashed. It turned out it wasn't even the end of the first mission. I had just entered a cutscene that was sending me to a different area of the first mission, because it's like the first mission is a train.
Oh.
It's a train section, and then you kind of go into a base, and there's this thing about there's this weird project that's where I feel some of the alternate reality, or not alternate reality, alternate history elements that they're trying to do may be seeping in, but it's still not. When I think alternate history, something I think Wolfenstein. We talked about like the Wolfenstein, New Order, New Colossus games. I feel those are more obvious alternate history. They go for it. This one seems fictitious, like not that much more that different than a movie probably. They had mentioned that the vibe of the characters that you play with is kind of like they took inspiration of Inglourious Bastards. I would say I can see it because it's like this eclectic group of people together trying to do missions like post World War II, or it seems like that, but without the wit and the charm, I would say. And especially after you finish that first mission, something big happens and then you flash back into the war. So
Okay.
yeah,
It's a framing device from after the war, or just a later point in it?
you start the first mission is like sometime after the war in 1945, but there's still some Nazis and all of that. But then the second and third mission, you're like Operation Tango, or I don't even remember what the name of that thing is.
Yeah.
But it's like it's a thing that the British did at the same time as D-Day. That's kind of like the next missions that I did. So I played both of those, and because I'm playing it on my brother, on the computer that my brother uses to play competitively, I only briefly played, so I haven't finished that campaign. So I will say this, from an engine feel, night and day compared to Cold War. Like this is clearly, they took the tech from Modern Warfare 2019, and if there's one thing that game does really well, it's have a great look and feel to it. So if you want that with World War II, and finally having hitbox detection in the campaign, whenever you shoot an enemy, you see like the cross that hits. That's the one thing that to me was missing from Modern Warfare 2019. It's worth trying. I still say that 3 missions in, I don't see what is it that makes this campaign special yet. There hasn't been anything that I played that I'm like, yeah, this is interesting. At least this is an interesting mechanic, this interesting wrinkle that at least makes it stand out from maybe previous entries. In fact, like if there's one thing that I have to give World War II, the game from Sledgehammer they did 4 years ago, that's crazy, is that they tried a few things with the campaign, like no rechargeable health in that one, no reticle, and you use a bunch of your squad mates to reload your weapons, get some med kits, maybe get some grenades or some support and all that. That they don't seem like they did like a unique mechanic in this one yet. Obviously, we saw the demo from the opening night live back in August, where you play as one of the snipers played by Laura Bailey. She's a good character named Petrova in this one. And there's some climbing in that, so maybe that's the mechanic they added to be like, oh, this is what's different for this one. But so far,
forgot about that, honestly, with like the buzzing of all
and
that.
There's some rocks, and there's like rock climbing. I don't know how far how far out I am before I played that campaign, because you are going to be like, I'm playing with Arthur Kingsley. That's the name of the
I saw
character.
That name. That looked like the most like randomly British name I could think of, honestly.
Exactly, just to make sure you're playing as a black British person. This is Arthur Kingsley, because he wants to like you want to feel like you're this kind of king style leader. Like he jumps as a leader for like the British, and he's the one leading this resistance group. It's
funny that you mentioned that, because that's also a Harry Potter character.
Yeah.
Kingsley.
So yeah, he's a character you play. Like, you play a character that, spoilers, gets killed at the beginning of this game.
Okay.
So, but that's like the tradition. Like, you getting killed in a Call of Duty game. That's like, it's been happening since 2007. Yeah. So that's not
Bring
a shocking.
On the next guy.
Exactly. So and then after that happens, that's when you start flashbacking. It seems like it's the way I'm just spitballing here, that how they're framing this story is that you're gonna see how this team of separate Petrova is from Russia, there's this dude's from Britain, and from all these different places, how they all came together to do this task force that's finding this hidden project from the Nazis. So I can see that's kind of like the framing of this story, but this is just me spitballing just based on the 3 missions. If you enjoy Call of Duty games, this is still another one. After replaying so many of them this year, I still find myself, there's something digestible about them that I can always play one of these every year. I have this special thing that this year I didn't have to pay a cent because my brother bought it on PC. I kind of wish he had bought it on PS5, or if he had asked me, I could have at least give half of it, because it's $70 and PC it's $60. Because we just recently also got a 4K UHD TV.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's so crazy because I've always told Paul about like how big a jump a 4K TV is, and I had not seen that jump myself. I just knew about it. And really? I finally got to see that, and most of the thing that I've been playing other than Vanguard has just been like testing a bunch of games. We're like, how does this look at 4K HDR? Let me see God of War. Oh my god, this is insane. Okay, let me see Horizon with 4K UHD, and it's popped. Seeing Ghost of Tsushima pop. Modern Warfare 2019 is insane looking with HDR. I tested the mission for Modern Warfare 2019 where you go through the house that it's all dark, and I took off and I took off my goggles, and when you're like going up a stair, that is the one thing that's still illuminated. I told my brothers, I look, because I was like, this is what HDR does. Look how much the black and the light better contrast here. So, and then I also tried Kina with in the section that I left off, which is that to the left of the map, that is kind of like a fiery place, or it looks kind of like it's on fire.
Yeah.
It also popped there. So
I will say my TV is terrible with contrast. It's great
you have to
with
edit
colors.
It. You have to edit it.
I tried to, and I just haven't been able to dial it in because it changes for every game you play on it. And it also depends from the TV menus, the game menus, and sometimes I just can't figure out what
Here's the trick. Because your TV has HDR, right?
Usually, yeah.
Yeah, so no, usually your TV is an HDR TV. You can enable that.
Well, sometimes the game will say like, oh, okay, we can't do HDR settings, and then it'll be grayed out on the TV.
That's weird. Well, then see if you can...
Like if I do the game mode that gives me the 120 hertz,
yeah,
it doesn't like HDR.
No, 120 frames and HDR. Some TVs allow it, others don't. The trick with HDR is that every game has a different configuration. So what you need to do is you have to go to the options and calibrate it per game.
I know.
It's a per game calibration. Exactly. You can't just blanket be like, just give me the best. I wish it was like turn HDR on and that's it. They just give you, no, you have to like calibrate it for your TV, because the problem with HDR is that every TV implements it differently. Because one TV just has base HDR, the other one has HDR10, the other one has like Dolby something. It's like it's is the one thing that it's insane that they didn't standardize. So it's very hard for you to get like a common, this is the setting for you to look better. Because at first when we started testing HDR, it didn't look good. My brother was like, I don't want to play this in HDR. This looks washed out. Like the colors feel muted. And I was like, give me a few, I will be tweaking it. And then I finally tweaked it and he was like, come here. He was like, oh, okay. Now I see it. So that's the problem. It takes a little extra. It's the PC-like nature of like, you have to do a little bit more.
That's one of the problems. But then also, I understand a lot about artistic stuff and art in general, but color is something I'm still learning. So I don't know what some of these do. And then when you like lower something like contrast and raise something like sharpness, I'm like, I don't even know what sharpness does, much less how it makes it better.
Yeah, sharpness is like sometimes it just makes the game look more edgy to the sides.
But then
it pops the edges. So.
Sometimes, I mean, this is the guy that still doesn't really recognize when something's at 60 frames per second versus lower or higher. Like, I still struggle. Like when I see it on playback, it's clear. I can see it. It's easy. But when I'm playing it, I'm like, I think it dropped. I'm not really sure. Screen tearing? Don't really know. It's just my eyes don't pick it up sometimes. So this is where I'm like, I'm out of my depth, and I'm just going to make something that looks the best for what I can. And outside of that, I'm not going to sit there for 20 minutes on every game I play because I jump around so much.
I will say though, if you're in a next gen machine or you're planning on getting a next gen machine, budget a 4K TV to also get to enjoy more of the things that it gives you. Especially right now that we're getting close to Black Friday, there should be some pretty good sales for it. One thing that I really appreciate about the 4K market is that it's not as overvalued as the 1080p market. That's what I was talking with my dad about it. We had a 3D 1080p TV from 2012 that cost us almost $4,000.
Well, 3D was just a horrible
gimmick. Exactly. It was a horribly expensive gimmick, but we went for it because there was a special price for it during the quote-unquote Black Friday sale they did here. That's funny. Other countries adopting the Black Friday thing that was used to be a US thing. Yes. It's just a marketing, like, just appeal to the capitalism of the people so they can just spend the money they don't have. But I remember when I got it, but then 3 years later 4K became a thing. I was like, oh no, because I was like, this sucks because they spent all this money on this one. How can I convince them that it's worth upgrading for this other one? And then we just kept up. Like, we almost had this TV that we ended up selling it. My brother and I sold it, and for like $500, which is completely devalued from. But at this point, it was a TV that's not even sold anymore. So it was like, and we bought the one that we got for like $800, and it's a 65-inch. So it's a big one. So we got lucky. It's like, yeah, we just have to put a little bit more money with this one. But it's like, I had to tell my dad, I was like, just keep in mind, like, this, because of the technology we use has been completely devalued. There's no way we can extract more, especially in El Salvador.
No.
It's
I'm kind of impressed y'all even got 500 out of it, honestly.
I think we gypped him. But that's the thing.
Probably.
That's the thing. It's a really good TV. The problem is that when you know that 4K is the thing now, staying with a 1080p just doesn't cut it. And at a certain point, I wasn't even that excited about playing some PS5 games because I knew that there was a way for them to look better. Like, to me, the realization moment came with Guardians of the Galaxy. Its fidelity mode and performance mode, I saw some big changes in that one. That was like, oh, yeah, I'll wait. And now I have it, and I saw it. I was like, I'm glad I waited, because now this performance mode looks so much better now. So not as edgy, like, you don't see the rough edges. But yeah, try to get a 4K TV if you can afford it. There's some really good, the TCL, that's like $300 ones. That's like, if you need the good, cheap, workable, you can go for TCL. If you can invest a little bit more, definitely go for it. But yeah, definitely get a 4K TV if you want to do next gen right. Paul, we've also played Halo 3. We beat Halo 3. And what do you think of finally having gone through the Bungie trilogy?
I'm going to say something that's going to get me burned at the stake by every Halo fan. I enjoyed replaying 2 more than 3.
Same. I enjoyed it more this time.
I don't know what it is. All right. Well, I'm gonna be honest.
Your experience with Halo 3.
was really rough, and it ruined a lot of the fun that I was having. But it also, I don't know, it's probably because 2 got remade from the ground up that it just looked so much cleaner and so much
Mm-hmm.
better, and everything was just like crisp, clean. Um, it made a lot more sense from a plot standpoint, but then I was also like hyped up for 3, and that was 3 was like one of the first games that I ever was like super excited for before it came out.
Mm-hmm.
And I was watching on G4 TV because I was staying
The
at my aunt's
commercials.
house.
The commercials.
Yeah. I was staying at my aunt's house who had G4 TV. My parents didn't, and I was losing my mind because they had like people lined up, people dressed as Master Chief. It was just crazy, and then all the commercials, like you said. So yeah, I enjoyed myself. It was fun. It got better, honestly, like because I enjoyed the first half of it less than I used to,
Mm-hmm.
and I
And the
enjoyed
second
the
half
second
more, right?
half a lot more, which used to not really as much be the case for me. But I enjoyed it. I liked it. I still kind of miss that style because it had a cleanness to it, a simplicity to the style as well.
That you
Johnson,
see, right, with Halo
yeah,
4 when we
right.
jumped into that one.
Oh, we went. Oh my gosh! I mean, it's such a gorgeous game as well. So yeah, we can add a Halo 4 on there briefly for the first couple missions, but which I'm enjoying. I'm vibing with it. It's definitely very different, but we'll see.
Yeah.
about the
3
rest.
will always be like nostalgia. I can't take my nostalgia goggles of 3 because I remember playing it. I always kept saying this lighting, this specific look to it just screams 2007 for me. It just reminds me of that time. I keep saying, I think I told it to you while we were playing through it, and also after it. 2 holds up better through a story, because it has that Halo 2 story is probably the most interesting of the 3 Halo games. Halo 1 is like super simple story, like there's barely anything to it. 2 attempted to add a little bit more depth to the Covenant side, that then obviously you have the fun bombasticness of the Chief sections, but the Arbiter side is what makes a bit of the lore a little bit more understandable and digestible, and it feels like there's more to it than it seems like there is. It seems like a more expansive game because of that. 3 obviously it took the criticisms of 2 to heart, because people at the time just didn't want to play as Arbiter. That's just true. It's more these days that people are more appreciative of the Arbiter side of things. Which
I will say, I appreciate it, but I still don't want to play as him.
Yeah, exactly. There's some people that feel somewhere in the middle, but it still made you enjoy Halo 2 in this playthrough more than 3. And I still say it's because also 3 kind of goes back to the Halo 1 sensibility, that there's barely any story to it. It's just bombast, and that's fun bombast. I like the biodiversity of the bombasticness of the different environments in that one, and the Warthog run at the end. It's way better than in Halo 1. So, and obviously because of time constraints, we were planning on doing ODST and Reach, but your vacation week, your full vacation week, and not being able to play during weekends usually, that was like, I was just making the math. I was like, yeah, I think we just have to do the Chief ones before Infinite, and maybe double back to ODST and Reach.
Which I still want to do.
Yeah. The things I've been playing, I've been playing ODST kind of like in the download myself, just to kind of reacclimate, because that game is like the only open world Bungie Halo game when you're in New Mombasa. So I'm trying to like remember, because that game at the very beginning doesn't tell you what you need to do, and I know you.
Oh no.
So before it finally starts telling you where to go, you kind of have to. So I was like, okay, before we eventually play ourselves, I kind of want to go through it so I know how to quickly go through these parts, because I really enjoy that game precisely for that reason, because it's so different from the other ones. Reach is more traditional. Reach is like Halo 3. So, but we're doing 4 now, and we might sneak in a second playthrough Halo 4 before you go on vacation. So keep an eye. So you will see it. If you follow my Twitch, you'll see it there. I haven't uploaded them yet to YouTube, but I'm planning this week part 2 and 3 and part 1 and 2 of Halo 3 and Halo 4. They're gonna go live this week.
Yes.
So
which reminds me, I need to make the thumbnails for that.
Yeah, just do part 2, part 3, part 1, part 2 for Halo 4. That's all you need. And yeah, that's all I've been playing. Obviously you play Halo 3. What else have you been playing, Paul?
I'm going in order of least played to most played.
Mm-hmm.
I went through a little more of Devil May Cry Special Edition, and
Mm-hmm.
it's vibing with me more and more. I finally got to the point where you play as Dante,
Mm-hmm.
and his move set and style is so good that I wish that they would just let you play as him only again.
Mm-hmm.
I know at this point they've moved on, and Nero is now the main character of the Devil May Cry series, and Dante's more of a side character because he's almost a joke and a meme in himself, and he's
Mm-hmm.
been flanderized more or less and caricatured into this archetype
Mm-hmm.
rather than the person he used to be. What were you gonna ask?
I would make the argument that when Nero was the quote unquote main character in Devil May Cry 4, it sucked. I think they made him a better character in 5. That you
They
don't feel
did.
as bad as playing with him.
Part of that is because Devil May Cry 4 was apparently notoriously cut short, and that's why all of Dante's levels are just Nero's and
In
backwards,
backwards.
because they realized they didn't have time to make entire levels around that, so they just had him go back. Um, which it makes so much sense and it sucks at the same time. But in this sense, they did make it with each of them has a very different story to play. A lot of Dante's play out with talking about lore from like the books
Mm-hmm.
that were like a random thing that were never really canon, but are actually like you can find them at Barnes and Noble and places, and they explain his original human name of Tony Redgrave and who
Mm-hmm.
made his guns, and it's all stuff that was like in the books that nobody really paid attention to. So people like me who did all that stuff are like, oh my gosh, they're talking about all this crazy nonsense, and it's the funniest way of adding canon where it's like bad English Japanese kind of style with like misspellings and stuff, and they're like, oh yes, but it's actually misspelled because of this reason. There was a sign outside of the gunsmith's shop, and I was like, whoa, this is getting way too deep for me. But it's really funny how like they incorporate stuff like that in there for the people that are like really intense into that series. But anyway, I love his 4 methods of trickster, swordmaster, gunslinger, and royal guard, and being able to switch between each of them on the fly makes the game so fun. Especially when you get better techniques and abilities for that, and when you understand it, you become this freaking acrobat that just does wild nonsense.
I have a confession. I've never beaten the original trilogy. I've only beaten
That's
4 and
okay.
5. Yeah.
If I'm being
I played
entirely honest,
I played a little bit of 1 and 3. I've heard bad things about 2. And I know
yeah,
the changes of the styles comes from 3. Because
yes. They build into it. So I've never actually beat 1 or 2. 1 is actually extremely difficult, and a lot of people are like, all right, yeah, listen, it's either just do the thing that works because guns were overpowered in that game. You just like, all right, just shoot everything you can and
it feels
avoid,
more like Resident Evil than the other ones because Devil
which
May
it
Cry.
was.
Devil May Cry was a Resident Evil game before they spin it
It's so
out.
weird. It was like
Uh-huh.
a spin-off.
Uh-huh.
But to make it into one of the most iconic and unique series in the world. But yeah, so 1 and 2 were like notoriously either hard, or 2 just didn't do enough to really make it interesting. 3 was like the reinvigoration of the series. It was a reboot, it was a prequel, that whole thing. That's where the styles came in, but you had to choose a style from the
For the
shop,
menu. Hmm.
and that was where you kept it, and then you had to change it each time you went back, so you couldn't like switch them on the fly really.
Yeah, that was add-in 4.
Correct. Well, you
Yeah.
could switch at least the weapons in 3 on the fly, but you could only pick, I think, 2 of them each. And then 4, that's where they added the directional buttons, changing the styles, and everyone went, "Oh, this is a really good idea. We should keep that going." I almost wish they had done that for Nero as well, in a sense, which I will say it keeps them unique because Nero has his own thing, Dante has his own thing, but just that idea is so good. Being able to completely change what certain buttons do
Hmm.
gives you so much strength. I mean, just look at the Devil May Cry reboot, where you could hold one trigger, hold the
Mhm.
other trigger, or let go, and it's 3 completely different movesets.
And I love that for about it.
So good. I almost wanted to say peaked with that, but it was just such a great concept. So yeah. Anyway, That's all I've been saying with that. Just enjoy the style, and it's
Mhm.
really fun. Continued playing For Honor, going back to play through all the different characters. It's really fun. It's very much a game that you get out of it what you put into it, because if you just keep playing it, you're going to get bored as heck.
Mhm.
But playing the Dominion mode and just figuring out how the characters work that you're trying to mess with, unlocking new characters, playing old ones that you never mess with. And I'm just such a sucker for like knight characters, so
Mhm.
I'm just like, I'm going to figure out how all of these guys work, and I'm just going to ruin people. It's also really interesting to see how common the offensive emblems still are on that game. At least I haven't seen any swastikas, thank God. But I've seen a lot of weird what's Ahegao faces of like that. They make emblems of that face, butts, and all sorts of fun, obscure, and obscene imagery on those. But usually it's pretty tame now. It used to be like a lot of like Nazi symbolism up
Yes,
there.
yes, but
I don't know why
that's
people
not
thought they could do
that's not
that.
acceptable these days, and I'm glad. Even though I wish more World War II games would not hide that because it's part of history.
Yeah, that's a whole other thing that is just yikes.
Mhm.
But at least For Honor makes it the most easy that I think I've ever seen, where you just like pull it up, hit it, report thing, and
Mhm.
there's an entire separate reason to reporting of offensive emblem, and I'm like,
Mhm.
gotcha. So that feels good. But anyway, yeah, playing the heck out of that. I love it. So also playing Forza Horizon 5.
Mhm.
Finally downloaded that on Game Pass.
After
On
I told you
PC
to.
after you told me to last week, and I'm enjoying the heck out of it. I love that they give you such a good car at the start, because I do like working your way up, but at a certain point when you're trying to drive through an open world and you have this terrible car that won't break 70, it's really hard to get into the game.
Mhm.
So, which is what they did in the first one. But this time, like, they just right off the bat give you like an S-Class Corvette, and I love that car so much. So the fact that they give you that for default, it healed my soul and added years to my life.
Were you able to try the off-road races? When you're
Yes,
like,
a
yeah.
few of them. I
Oh my god.
it's immensely fun. Even when you're driving the wrong type of car on the wrong thing, it's funny because if you pick that, it gives the drivatars similar cars, so you're
Mhm.
always going to be close to them. And so if you want to do it with like a C or D class vehicle, it'll put them all in C and D classes, to make sure that it's a fair race. Because initially it was like, this race is only for this rank. You have to pick a car in that rank, and you had to either like soup up your current car or pick one you already had. But now it's like, just pick whichever one you want, buddy. And I really appreciate that, because that lets me choose whatever car I want. If I want to ride in a random BMW coupe, I can. If I want to get in, my friend made a U-Haul van that he drives around the city in sometimes, and I also there was a FedEx truck that I saw in the world. He like drifted around the corner on a highway, and I about lost my mind because it was the funniest thing. And then of course, flying off hills and like your car just flipping all over the place is just immensely fun. But those mechanics are amazing.
I told you, it's just
Um,
there's no more fun arcade style racer.
it feels so
Yeah, no.
good, and then like so realistic at the same time with most of those cars. And it feels so great. I love it so much, and I'm glad that I have a machine that can play it semi properly.
Mhm.
And I'm gonna mess with that after we're done streaming today. I'm gonna
Uh-huh.
mess with those options, and I'm gonna get that sucker to work, and I'm gonna
Uh-huh.
keep playing it tonight. But I'm enjoying the heck out of it. So the last game
Mhm.
that I played and revisited was Hades, thanks to our very own Zach,
Who's been playing
who
it?
has been playing it, and he posted his victory uh, skills and
Yeah,
everything that he
and
used to get it. And I took that very personally because I'd never beaten that game, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I've got to actually go back and beat this." Zach, if
And
you're
you did it
watching
on
this, I'm
Switch, or
actually
did you get the
Switch.
Yeah.
because that was the one that I bought it on before they
Same.
put it on everything else. And I don't really want to spend more money on it, honestly, even though I probably would do better on like the others, even though I play it on a pro controller. The fact that it's like accept is B, which is reversed on the Switch, but I'm used to the Xbox controller now. I keep like getting my buttons kind of switched up. But anyway, I love it, and I'm great at it at certain points, but I get to one part of the game and all of my abilities just go out the window. And it's that freaking Minotaur and Theseus fight, and I can't touch them.
Have you put the God mode on?
What?
The God mode? It's basically an easy mode.
I didn't know that was a thing.
Put it on and finish that game.
Wait, so where do you do this?
It's in the options, if I remember correctly.
Oh my gosh. Okay, well, I guess I'll do that then.
Yeah.
Man, that's funny though. So, wow. Yeah, I guess I'll go do that and beat the game finally, because I do really well. I get a great setup and I make it the whole way there, and then they just freaking flash me. They it's something about like the isometric perspective messes me up from like knowing where I'm away from Theseus's spear. And then it's hard for me for whatever reason to avoid the Minotaur. Like I dash, and you know how he's supposed to charge at you and you're supposed to get him to run into something. I don't know why, like he'll just clip through the side of some of these things and keep coming after me. And that's where it messes me up, because I'm like, oh, okay, like dash, 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 and then he's like right on my heels, and I'm trying to get around, and sometimes I can't get around fast enough, and he gets me. But like I do really well with the spear, I do really well with the shield, and it's so much fun, and I love the style, I love the art, I love the way it plays, and I can't get lost in it except for socially.
Yeah, I only beat one run of that game, and obviously the way you have to beat that game is you have to beat multiple runs to get most of it. I did,
which hurt my soul to find that out, because I was like, oh, okay, cool, once I beat this, it's over, right?
No, roguelikes is supposed to be like a repeating thing, and that's what I loved about it, because I was like, yes, I have a game that I've been wanting it forever game on Switch, in a way. One that I know that I'm not gonna run out of games for this system eventually, so having one that could be like more replayable that way. I wanted Mario Maker 2 to be that, and then that game quickly died. Super sad. And my memory of Hades will always be the 2020 presidential election, because that's the game I played while I had like the news as I was keeping tally of how that election was going. So
wow.
Yeah, it was like that week, because remember that election lasted a whole week. The counting and all that because of the mail-in votes. So
I remember that.
And it was very hard not to keep track of that, because it was such an unprecedented time that it was going to be an election not decided on election night like usual. Yeah. So, and then on top of that, I remember it. I have such perfect memory. It was when the hurricane was coming to my country, and there's all this like winds like flapping outside, and then me playing, having the newscast and playing Hades there. It was, I'll always never forget that. And I can't wait to ever do another run for that game, because that game is so good. But Paul, before we go more long-winded, we're back to topics. Tell me, shoot me, beam me.
All right.
If you want to teach me.
Yeah. Gosh. All right. So our first question is going to be, pick a game that many people did not like that you personally love. A game that is, it doesn't have to be universally hated, but just a game that widely is considered not good, just
I have it.
Trash, cheap, whatever. All right, hit me with it.
Assassin's Creed 3.
Ooh. Tell me why.
That's a game that disappointed so many people.
Me included.
It disappointed so many, because it was finally, we're going back to a numbered Assassin's Creed game after we went on the Brotherhood Revelations tangents. This is the game that is gonna tie up the Desmond story. Is it 2012? It's like, is the game releasing in 2012, 2 months before December 21st, 2012? So the synergy couldn't have been more perfect. And at launch, that game was FUBAR. That game was the buggiest Assassin's Creed had ever been when it had launched. And especially just if you're mainlining that game, it's just a collection of you running to this place, there's a cutscene, running to this other place, there's a cutscene. Very strict parameters, sometimes asking you about that they wanted from your character to do specific things that didn't feel part of the freewheeling nature of the previous games. And that was just within the story. So a lot of people, sometimes at that time, Ubisoft games were not very well known for their activities outside their stories. They had just started that, but because it was just people were just focused on trying to get and see what the end of the original arc of Assassin's Creed was going to be, people really didn't like that game. And people always say that it's disappointing. And I would agree to some extent with that. Like, the ending of the Desmond arc is trash. However, I play that game a lot because its world, everything, like the side content, that game was so expansive outside its story. And I basically 100%ed that game back on the Xbox 360. Did literally everything. Did the hunting, did the secret society missions, so, like, discovered the hidden sewers within Boston that had like ties to the Freemasons. There was so much they packed into that game. But the problem was that game didn't funnel you towards that. You had to find that. And you had to be willing to find that. Other games, I think Black Flag the year after, did a better job at trying to unify all its different pieces into something a little bit more cohesive. 3 felt like did all this different stuff and put it in the game without like a little tiny kernel of, hey, you know, if you could do this, it would improve some stuff over here. You didn't know that. So that's why I feel 3 is a gem in its world, in its environment, in some of the things that you can do, and its expansiveness, that because the game didn't incentivize you to engage with that content, a lot of people missed out on that. Basically, the only thing that people engaged with that game was the weakest part of the game, which it deserves criticism. It's like, usually you wouldn't expect the story stuff of an Assassin's Creed game to be the thing that wasn't up to par, but 3 was the one that everything around its story was so good. But not many people know, and the stigma of that game is always one that is like, people always think of it in the lesser side of Assassin's Creed, even though to me personally, I think Unity is a worse game. It's a way worse game. So yeah, that's mine.
Okay, that's awesome. I will say that one day I do want to sit down and replay that game from start to finish, because
on
I think
PS4.
I would have a very different feeling to it. And just like you said, because it didn't funnel you or even tell you that some things were even in the game, I missed out on so much side content because I didn't know to look for it, basically. Because it never told me it was there half the time.
There was no incentivization for you other than completion. It's not like in Black Flag, if you did this, you're gonna earn this. If you so it's like they missed out on that.
Which Black Flag, just the creme de la creme on so much stuff. But anyway, I like that. I appreciate it, and I think that it is perfectly valid, especially looking back on the series as a whole. Mine, I've spoken partially on it. I have 2, depending on how long it is, because one of them is probably not a surprise to you, and that is the Dishonored game. I'm going to say the first one.
Okay. Time out.
Okay.
It's beloved. Both of those games are beloved
by some people.
No, in majority, they're really beloved. In fact, people even, I would give you 2. Sometimes 2 gets more crap than 1.
That's where I was gonna kind of have like the caveat. You decided to jump on me the second I said the name of it, because they weren't commercial successes. I will say they were great on that. Second one, I was gonna have like a short caveat of that's probably my favorite, even more than the second one. And a lot of people didn't like, for whatever reason, certain aspects of it, and I was just gonna briefly wrap up how like perfect that almost open world feel is, being able to have the options to do so many different things, the ability for you to like, I swear, like if you have 20 people in a room that say, all right, figure out how you're going to clear out these 5 guys in this room, you're going to have 20 different ways that people do that. And it's so amazing how you can have the options to do certain things with the right physics, with the right tools. And I grew up playing the old Thief games, which
This is
are
better
way
Thief.
before. Yes, it's way better Thief, and then they tried remaking Thief on the PS4
After Dishonored, and it wasn't as good.
That was terrible. Honestly, it was a huge insult to me. And I remember my cousin, who's like in his 40s now. He grew up playing those as well, and he's the one that set me on that series. He was like, "Oh, I heard they're making a new Thief game." I was like, "No, they didn't."
Yeah. So, do you know that the Thief game is done by the Deus Ex people? That's what blew my mind.
I did, which makes sense because the old Deus Ex games were kind of similar in that vein. I mean, more RPG style, but that like freedom of choose your way of doing things. It was just more tied through dialogue. Than like Thief, where it's like hardly any dialogue. Here's a place, figure it out. And my goodness, those Thief games are like, they don't play around. They don't hold your hand at all. So I literally had to have him like explain things to me from over my shoulder. But it was just such a nice thing to me that I really liked Dishonored 2. And the other one, as an honorable mention, was the Devil May Cry remake. Because
that one I would agree. That one gets so much hate.
Yes.
Unnecessary hate.
Undeserved for the most part. In some ways, absolutely, I agree. It is way too edgy. It is way too washed out, which I get is part of the point of like the physical world to the spiritual.
That's what I love about it, though.
Drained out. So it was cool that it was like, all right, it's drained out, and then you got bursts of color in the demon world, but sometimes it like went too much, and it was like just all gray almost, and I was like, give me just a little something, guys. Like, at least approach a little better with that. And I didn't like the Joe Rogan stand-in of a boss.
the newscaster that's on like straight up from Fox News.
Any of it. It was a little too on the nose. I think it was like low-hanging fruit. It's like, oh yeah, totally. It's the Bill O'Reilly guy, and he's totally evil, and he's part of the demons. And I was like, okay, yeah, whatever. It's like, oh, the Coke stand-in is actually selling you demonic drinks and stuff. And I was like, okay.
It was a sharp shot at capitalism.
Yeah, and I was like, okay. I wanted to make sure that I got this right. My wife just got to where we needed to go, and I was making sure that she was good because she called me. Anyway,
yeah.
Yeah, it was a lot of low-hanging fruit and stuff, and I liked some of the characters, and then some of them just didn't really vibe with me. I loved Dante's growth as like from the starting point, which, yeah, he's an absolute jackass, but then he grows into somebody who actually learns to care for people. Whether or not you agree with how he gets there is a little bit muddy, but I agree that at the end he actually starts to learn to care for humans. He gets his white hair, all that great stuff. Virgil is they ruined his character absolutely. I just could not get into him. He was just like very like, I'm very sophisticated. I wear gloves to everything. Yeah.
But I would say that a Devil May Cry reboot is better written than any of the normal DMC games. It has like it had more storytelling chops because of Ninja Theory.
It has less campiness. I agree. They just switch it out for edginess.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like there's a market for that. There's an interest in that, and then there's parts that are like really genuinely heartfelt, like the moment where the base for their resistance or whatever gets raided, but Dante is stuck in the spirit world while Kat is in the physical world, and he's like hurriedly trying to explain to her how to surrender to the police so she doesn't get shot.
Mhm.
And he's like, raise your hands, get on your knees, face away from them, do all this stuff, and then like she still gets shot, and he has to stand there watching her get like brutalized by the police. And I'm like, wow, this is a lot heavier than I thought I would see in a Devil May Cry game.
Exactly.
But and then of course later on they added really awesome stuff like the extra costumes and things. The demon designs are really great. And we talked about it earlier, the move set and the style is fantastic with combat, and it's still, I don't think, has been matched by most games.
Yeah, so from the two games that you mentioned for this topic, so Dishonored 1, obviously the caveat was that it didn't sell very well because it was a different kind of concept game that came out in the shooter dominated 2012 era. But everyone that played Dishonored 1, in its majority, they really like it, and it was highly reviewed, and it was one of the games of the year of 2012. DMC though, that's one that reviewed really well, but the fan base didn't really take to it. That's the one that I feel in your topic really fits, because everyone likes to talk
more than one, because I was like, all right, this one's going to be a caveat because most people kind of like it in its circle, but overall outside
I have another one.
I try to tell people and they don't give it a shot. What do you got?
Avengers.
Hey, okay, well,
we've talked about
one, so.
Exactly. It's like I know where that game fails, I know where that game it's so strong, but I love it. I freaking love that game that I went on a whole rant this past week when they announced Spider-Man, because it was like, especially seeing that the way they're gonna announce they did Spider-Man is because of its exclusive nature. They had to do it as bare minimum as possible as to not alienate the Xbox and PC people, because a lot of the expansion content of that game is story based. You can't do a story based expansion in only one platform there, so you have to do that low hanging fruit as minimum as possible so that they don't feel like they're missing, the other places are gonna be missing content. And how that's Spider-Man could have been the thing that would have brought a lot of people in, because Spider-Man is the most beloved superhero of all time. It's fact. Maybe Batman is the other one, but I think those two are like the top superhero. But yeah, I mentioned in this game many times, in this show many times, I'm a big fan of that game's combat, especially when you level up all your characters and unlock all their skills. I love the story content. Obviously, its service element is the one that gets that game very memed on, and I would agree with that. But I enjoy the core of it so much that I can tolerate the things it fails. So yeah, that's my other one. I think that one's a little bit more obvious because the funny thing is that Assassin's Creed 3 reviewed really well, but it stands like it's not one that aged well in a critical.
It's definitely one of the more dark horse entries in the series, if you ask fans of it.
Yeah, they're never gonna be anyone's favorite. This is rare for that. So
yeah.
Paul, do you have any other things you want to talk about, topics? Or?
I feel like we could, but we could also call it here. What do you think?
Let's see one more. Let me see what you got.
All right, so this one's going to be maybe a little bit more in depth. I want you, Alejandro, imagine any game controller that you've ever held in your hand. Create one new addition to modern controllers and why it would be useful.
Dang, that's
so I'm gonna let you think about this one because it honestly took me a solid like 15-20 minutes to come up with something myself, and I realized my answer would be, it's gonna be so weird, splitting the controller in half again.
So like the Switch.
Yes. So the reason being is I realized when you're sitting here holding this, your body is not designed to sit like this for upwards of 4, 5 to 8 hours, whatever it is. Granted, that's on like the higher end of things, but even just the small amount you do this is honestly really difficult for some people, especially somebody like me who is pretty large. If I sit like this, it messes up my my shoulders, my wrists, my thumbs, all that stuff. But when I was playing with the Switch, I was able to sit back in a normal chair and sit like this,
with the two
play
Joy-Cons,
Hades, do any of that stuff, and to anything. I was even sitting on like the couch. and I was laid out like this, and I'm obviously the camera's not catching it, but I had like one arm back behind my head, one arm laid out like this, and I'm just playing the game that I was playing, and it didn't matter what I was doing, but I could like stretch out and do whatever I needed to with my arms to actually have better posture. I mean, ironic that you say better posture, and then I had like my arms all out like this, but at least it wasn't I have to sit like this or that's it. And sometimes I'll even like, if I'm playing my PS5 or whatever, I'll use whatever I can with one arm, and then I'll like stretch out the other arm while I'm sitting here trying to play the game one-handed for a minute, just to do whatever I need to. Like I used to drive in GTA 5 online with one arm. Because I figured out how to have like one hand over here and one hand on the trigger. All I could do was I couldn't brake, but I could drift, which was the R1. I could use the gas and I could use the stick, and that's all I really needed. So I'd get across the map while I'm messing with my phone or whatever, and it was a lot of fun. So anyway, yeah, that's what I would choose. I think would really help people out.
For me, is the universal acceptance of the back pedal.
I agree.
Because
but go on.
Yeah, obviously there's the pro control. Obviously there's the professional controllers that gives you the pedals down here, and obviously you have to charge more for those. Those are only for very specific people. But I feel they are due for mainstream. For mainstream acceptance. And what's funny is that last year Sony launched a back pedal adapter for the PS4 for $20,
and then they switched it out.
No, it's still there. It's still there. Like,
well, I mean, it's with the PS5.
Oh yeah, and they didn't exactly. So yeah. What was funny is that when that happened, I was like, are Sony releasing this because that's how they're gonna make the DualShock 4 compatible with the PS5? Great. Because they are, especially with how big the DualSense is compared to the DualShock 4, it's like that would have been perfect to add something down there to universally, to finally universally start building as a base the ability of having paddles that you can modify if you need it, especially for accessibility.
Yeah.
Imagine having that.
Some people can't move their thumbs that way, and even for professional people, it's easier to do something with all of these unutilized fingers than
because you're less exactly and having just your thumbs stay where they are, and have everything be kind of be somewhere else that you can kind of customize. So I thought that's where they were going, and then when I saw the PS5 controller didn't have back pedals and the device that you could buy for a PS4 wasn't compatible either with that one, I was like, what was the point for this? But I feel that's because I feel controllers, this is a tough topic because I feel controllers are pretty much perfect as it is.
See, that's what I was thinking the whole time, but then each time we think that, there's always some new innovation out there that comes out completely throwing it on its head, and we're like, how could we have not thought about this? Like, even though the touchpad on the PS4 and PS5 is a bit gimmicky, sometimes I'm like, that's kind of useful. I like being able to hit an extra button as opposed to the Xbox options. But
I feel like in controller innovation, that's why like after controllers came motion controls. And if you see, it's like the motion control era was both a fad and also a fascinating part of gaming, because what's funny is that motion controls are kind of coming back because of VR.
Yes,
because,
and I think it's really cool. That's where you definitely are getting more innovations by iteration.
I have heard many great things from some of the people that I listened to that played Resident Evil 4 VR through Oculus, and I've heard that people are enchanted by a different way to play that version of the game, or that takes a little bit of inspiration from the Wii version of Resident Evil 4 and having that kind of extra immersion. I feel like controller design is as good as it can be, but innovation is happening with different ways that you can interact with the game. And I feel the Wii had the right idea. It came out way too early in a very underpowered machine, kind of like I was mentioning with Metroid Prime 3 Corruption, playing through it again. It's kind of magical how precise you can be aiming with the Wiimote in that game, especially when it's so well designed, because there were many shooters in the Wii that were trash, absolute trash.
Definitely.
And especially I've noticed that the only way to make a motion control shooter work is if your frame rate is up there. It's a 60. Like Metroid Prime 3, it's a 60 frames per second game. In 2000,
Really?
yeah, it's a 60 frames. And that's very important.
How in the world did the Wii manage that?
As Retro Studios and Nintendo, how they were able to figure it out, because Mario Galaxy was 60 frames also there. So
Was
like
it really?
Yeah.
Oh.
Mario Sunshine wasn't. Mario Sunshine was 30.
I mean, that was GameCube.
Exactly, and neither was Mario 64. But
right.
Nintendo figured out it's like the best way to sometimes implement motion control is that you need your frame rate to be high enough. And that's why I feel like a game like Skyward Sword on Wii had some problems, because that game was 30. But Nintendo was onto something, obviously, because of its coexistence with other machines that were still being more traditionally played and were still selling so well. That's why they kind of had to move on from that. But it's so funny now that we're in the VR era. That's the best way to interact with a VR game.
Yeah.
Especially with the proper moving and proper tracking.
And
things.
Now that I think the most recent thing that I saw is a ring that goes over your fingers so it can see your individual hand movements. I was like, you can what now? Because that was one of the things that always messed me up, is you had to like still hit the button and then it would like close or open your hand. But now,
or trigger,
like,
or a trigger.
Basically,
have
the
that
trigger,
in the trigger.
But like now that you can do such way more fine motion movements. I mean, now you can do stuff like keep talking and nobody explodes with bomb defusal. You can do the PlayStation 4, PlayStation VR Resident Evil. You can do the Half-Life Alyx, the new Star Wars Vader Immortal.
The Vader Immortal.
Which sounds like such a metal name. Vader Immortal.
Yeah.
Crazy. Anyway, I honestly thought that was going to be like a horror game where you had to be hunted by Vader. That would have been, oh my gosh.
That'd be great.
But anyway, yeah, so I think that it's so cool to see the innovations of a new style of gaming, because I was worried that we had kind of figured out most of it. But then every time you do that, you find something new that works for you.
Think about the PS5 controller. What's an innovation they added in that one?
Well, that was the adaptive triggers
and the rumble.
In the rumble feature.
So like those kind of innovations are like more in the subtle way now.
Yeah.
Or in the more overt way.
Which helps, but I still think that there could be something that can be added. Like even if you added like 6 buttons on the front as opposed to 4, like fighting sticks. You could do something like that to add help for that stuff. The back buttons, multiple back buttons even. You could have 3 triggers. Think about that. I'm kind of
going back to the
silly
N64
about it. I'm being silly,
yeah.
But at some of those, I still think that there could be ways that you can push it. But the problem when you get to stuff like that is because the rest of the industry is standardized at this point. You can't do that without really changing things up. You would have to completely change the way your games were made.
Yeah, everything's just ubiquitous. Everyone's going for ubiquity almost. So doing something so out of the box, like so different from other ones, can risk alienate you from where the rest of the market is.
Right.
I want to give a shout out to Microsoft and Xbox, because they released the adaptive controller for the disabled people. That's a really awesome controller that is completely different from other controllers. That is almost looks like a DJ set almost, but it works, and that controller works with every game.
So many people that can do stuff with that, and you can take things out, put things in, make it work, and people are able to actually play games. Which that was one of my biggest fears when I was younger. I was like, what if I lose my hands? I'll never be able to play games again. But like with stuff like that, I'm like, oh shoot, people can actually like really do stuff. And I mean, I've watched people play like Apex Legends with one arm and one foot and just like really crazy stuff, but then that's also takes so much effort. There's some people that just don't have that kind of fine motor function, and the fact that Microsoft goes through the effort they're not going to make a lot of money off that.
Remember my episode with my finger?
Yeah.
After Metroid Dread, like after I couldn't press fire. It's a good thing that my finger has been fixed now, but it really finally made me more appreciative of the effort some companies are doing into adding their accessibility options to overcome facts of having to tap so quick that some people just don't have the dexterity to tap something so quick anymore.
And even if they do, they shouldn't, because that's how you get carpal tunnel when you do that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like they should really add those options just for the longevity of people playing games.
And they are. I'm so thankful. Like Naughty Dog's doing it, Insomniac's doing it, many others are doing it. I'm just glad that that's now accessibility is not that taboo anymore, and I'm glad that it's more and more embraced thing. And through that accessibility, I think that's where more innovation can come in to add different ways to adapt itself for different people. Like I mentioned, Microsoft was ahead of the ball there by doing that adaptive controller that they even promoted during the Super Bowl. It's so cool how they did it. So
that's true. I forgot about that. My goodness. Well, in any case, that is all that I had for this. I hope you appreciated the topic questions for today and for our listeners as well. Alejandro, before we wrap it up, where can people find you?
Twitch.tv/TheSlayerGiant. They can find me on Instagram at Alejandro Segovia 93 and on Twitter at @A_Duro Segovia. My written content is at thecriticalcorner.com. I haven't written anything in quite a while. I should remedy that. You can find some of that stuff there. Paul, where can people find you?
They can find me as always at Dork of Art on Twitter, also Dork of Art on YouTube, and Angel Sword 21 on Twitch. But until next time, Alejandro, thank you very much, and press X
to play.
Good night, everyone. See y'all next week.
See you later.